Hi folks, HR Funk here with my Pieta replica of a Remington New Model Army black powder cap and ball revolver. And every time I shoot this revolver in a video, some of you ask me about my cleaning process. And in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating the way I clean this revolver. And I clean it every time I shoot it because black powder and even black powder substitutes can cause rusting on firearms within a very short period of time. Some sources say as short a time as just a couple of hours from the time you're done firing until the rust actually starts to form. So very quickly after firing, I do clean this revolver, or if I shoot a black powder rifle, I clean that as well. And the process that I'm going to show you is the way I do it. I am not saying this is the way to do it. This is just the way I do it. Probably everybody that shoots these firearms has a little bit different way that they go about cleaning them. But normally when I clean this revolver after shooting, it takes me about 20 minutes or so. It's not particularly difficult. A lot of people think that cleaning black powder firearms takes a long time and it takes a lot of work and everything, and really not so much. And the way that I do it is really a simplified way of going about it. Now in this video, I'm going to demonstrate my typical cleaning for this revolver, which is the way I normally do it. But every so often, I do a deep clean where I completely disassemble the revolver. I take out every screw, every part, everything, and clean the entire thing. I'm not going to do that in this video because it's just not necessary every single time. But when I do the deep cleaning, the process that I use is exactly the same. It's just a little bit more involved, and obviously I'm cleaning every single part. A quick note before we get into the actual cleaning process. The reason I have to clean this revolver is because I recently had it out on the range shooting it for another video. And depending upon how scheduling goes, you may end up seeing this video before you see the shooting video. If so, you have a prelude to what's coming in the future. So with that out of the way, let's head on and check out the cleaning process for my black powder revolver. I'll kick things off with a basic disassembly. And one of the nice features of the Remington design revolvers is they are very easy to disassemble. Not that the Colt revolvers are particularly difficult, but the Remingtons are just a little bit easier. Simply lower the loading lever and pull out the cylinder pin. Bring the cylinder to half cock, or the hammer rather, to half cock, and the cylinder comes out very easily. Now I'm going to do just a little bit of disassembly. I'm going to take out this screw that holds the loading lever, so I can take that out, and I'm also going to remove the grips because there's no reason to get the wood all submerged in water or anything else, which is what's going to happen eventually with the rest of this. And so I've got a properly fitting screwdriver bit that I'm going to use for removing this screw. And it is not at all difficult to remove. That will free up the loading lever, and I can just pull it right out of the frame just like that. Next, I'll remove this screw so I can take the grips off the grip frame. Now when removing the grips, again, it is important to get a properly fitting screwdriver, and I'm going to start to back this screw out, and after I get it partially out, I'm going to push on it, and as I do that, it will start to push away this opposite side grip panel. That way I'm not going to have to try to pry it off or anything else as I go, and it's ready to more or less fall off. I can remove that, just flip the revolver over, and I'll now push the other side grip panel off, which, as you can see, fits very tight. So that prevents me having to pry on these grips and potentially damage them with a screwdriver or even damage the grip frame or anything else. This is as far as I'm going to disassemble the revolver this time around. Next, everything but the grips go into a bucket of warm soapy water. The water will neutralize the salts in the black powder to prevent that from rusting the metal. Now obviously The Revolver is going to have to be dried off to make sure the water does not cause any rust issues. And I will demonstrate how that is done. And all I'm doing right now is taking this little screw that held the loading lever in place and washing it off real well in the warm soapy water. By the way, if you've never washed a firearm or used warm soapy water to clean it up, you'll be surprised just exactly how clean this will get virtually any firearm, and especially a black powder firearm. Everything has now been soaking in here for a couple of minutes. All of the salts from the black powder should be neutralized at this point. So I'm going to take my wrench and remove each one of the nipples. And as I do this, I am going to then drop them into this little container, which has a mixture of 25% ballistol and 75% water. So what happens is that when the water eventually evaporates, it leaves a film of the oil on the outside and inside of these nipples, which prevents any rust or corrosion on the inside or outside of them. That's all 6. I'm going to swish them around a little bit, make sure they get well coated with that solution inside and outside, and they're just going to sit there and soak for a while. Now let's go back to the cylinder and do a little bit more cleaning here. So what I have here is a slotted tip out of a cheap shotgun cleaning kit, and I've just put a patch through, and I'm going to wrap it over the top, and then I'm going to put another patch on top of that because I want it to fit fairly tight inside the chambers of the cylinder. And I'm going to get this wet with the soapy water, and I am just going to clean out each one of these chambers. The firing residue becomes pretty soft in the water, so this will get out most, if not all of it. And I'm going to rinse it out again. And do the same thing one more time. I'm also going to clean around each one of the places where the nipple goes, and this is going to be a little bit too big. So I'll switch to a Q-tip for this part of the process. And I'm just going to clean all around in this area. Try to make sure that I don't have any firing residue, any residue from the caps inside, or anything else that might cause a problem there. Alright, the cylinder is basically done. Now what we have to do is heat this cylinder to the point that any water that's on there is going to dry off very, very quickly. And there are different ways this is done. Some people use hot boiling water that they put in a pot or a kettle or something on their stove and then pour that down inside. I'm fortunate to have a water heater that is very, very hot in my home, and I'm going to use a deep sink and just run that clean water down through here. It'll wash out all the rest of the fouling, and by the time I get done, this will be very, very hot. I will wipe it off with a rag. I will take some dry patches and clean down inside the chambers, and this will dry very, very quickly and not leave any sort of rust. And here's that deep sink. I'm just going to turn on the hot water, and while it's still cold, I'm going to make sure that it gets into all of the chambers all over the back, and it's heating up now. So I'm just going to put it down there and let it get that cylinder nice and hot. And I'm going to let it sit there for probably a good minute or so. And when I go to pick it up, I'm going to use a rag to pick it up out of there because it's going to be too hot to hold on to. That should be long enough. I'm going to wipe it off with a rag, and when I get back into some better light, I'll show you how clean it is. And I am just drying off the outside of the cylinder with my rag, and I'm now going to grab a dry cleaning patch and clean out each one of the individual chambers. And it might surprise you just how quickly the metal dries when you get it very, very hot. So now I'm just dry patching the chambers. And by the way, you notice when the patch comes out, it is still virtually perfectly clean. That's how clean that I've been able to get this cylinder and the firing chambers with just warm soapy water. By the way, the hot water, when you get this really, really hot, also opens up the pores in the metal. So any little bit of residue or what have you that might still be in there will be picked up by your cleaning patch as you do this. I'm just going to wipe off the face. And a couple of little things, just because I'm particular, I'm going to again dry off these areas with a Q-tip. And the last thing I like to do with my Q-tip is clean out the cylinder locking notches. The corrosive salts have all been neutralized at this point, but there's a little bit of soot that gets down in these, and I just don't like seeing it down in there. I could leave it and it wouldn't hurt a thing, but it just makes me feel better to get that all cleaned out of there. So now I am going to set my cylinder off to the side and let it cool. And the next time you see it, we're going to be starting to oil it. Next is our frame and barrel, which has been soaking in here the entire time that I have been working on the cylinder. And I'm going to take a bronze brush and just run it back and forth through the bore a few times, mainly just to loosen up anything that's in there. And there was quite a bit of lead and firing residue down inside the bore when I was done, just like there always is. Now I'm going to switch over from the bronze brush to a cleaning patch. I'm going to take my cleaning rod and a clean patch, and I'm going to get it wet in the hot soapy water, and I'm now going to run this down the bore to get everything out that I just loosened up with the other brush. And you can see that already there's not much on that cleaning patch. And I'm just going to scrub the bore. I'm also going to take a plastic toothbrush and just clean all around the inside of the frame to make sure I get all that residue off. Again, it's already neutralized, so the firing residue itself is not going to cause any rust, but I just want to clean it off of there so when I'm done, the revolver looks nice and clean. I always try to get these threads also right here at the rear of the barrel. Make sure I get everything cleaned out of there. Another somewhat hard to reach place is down here where the hammer goes into the frame, and you'll see that'll get all contaminated with firing residue and soot and what have you. I try to get that all cleaned out. Then I also have to heat this up similar to the way I heated up my cylinder. So this time I'm going to hold on to the rear of the grip frame with my rag, because as the metal heats up, the heat will travel all the way back here, and this will eventually get too hot for me to hold on to. And I want to make especially sure I get this hot water going down through the bore and wash out anything that might be left in there. It's important to heat the metal up enough that everything inside is also going to dry off. Since I didn't completely disassemble it, we need to make sure that we don't have any rust forming inside there. And so far, I've never had that happen using this process. And so I have been wiping off the frame after I got it good and hot. And you can see the water is all evaporating nicely. In fact, I don't see any water left on the outside. There might be some inside that's still evaporating. Let's see how the bore looks. I'm going to take another clean patch and run it down through the bore. And we'll see how it looks when it comes out the other end. And the battery on my camera died, so I don't know if you got to see that cleaning patch, but there it is. It's almost cleaner after going through the bore than it was before it started. So now what I'm going to do, and by the way, the battery on my camera died, that's why it quit so abruptly when you're looking at that cleaning patch before. And while I was waiting for it to get a little bit of a charge, I went ahead and cleaned the loading lever as well, which was exactly the same as I cleaned the other parts. I scrubbed it off while it was in the soapy water, and then I heated it up in that hot tap water, and you can see that the water is all about evaporated off of there as well. This is that exact same solution of 25% ballastol and 75% water, and I'm just going to liberally coat all the parts. Everything is still warm, and remember, when the water evaporates, it will leave a film of the ballastol oil. And I'm going to get some on a cleaning patch and run that through the bore. Just like that. And again, you can see how clean that patch is coming out. Now, I'm going to wipe everything down and wipe off that excess. And I'm also going to take some of that ballastol mixture and run a patch inside of each one of the chambers in the cylinder. And I'll get a good coating of this on the inside. Then I'll take a dry patch and get most of it back out. And again, what stays will just form a protective residue. There's a couple of things I want to point out at this stage of the process. If I can get you a view down into the cylinder there, you can see that there is no rust. Each one of the chambers is very, very clean, and really the only thing you're going to see is that light residue, or sheen maybe I should say, left over from the ballastol residue. Outside of the cylinder looks very, very good. And let's take a look if I can get one for you down the bore. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it to focus. Let me see if I can lock the focus and try to get a look for you. You might be able to see a little bit there. Again, no rust, nothing left in the bore at all. So that's looking good. And again, on the outside of the Revolver, nothing but a sheen left over from that ballastol. There's a couple of points that I want to make now as I reassemble the Revolver. One thing I like to do before I start my reassembly is to put some grease on the cylinder pin. And this is plain old Thompson Center bore butter, which works pretty well, and that will help keep that cylinder turning. I also like to use this product, which is called Barricade, and I'm going to put some on my rag right here. This is a metal preservative, and I like to put it on the grip frame underneath where the grips are going to go, just to prevent any possibility of rust starting to form underneath there. So I've taken all the nipples that I had resting in that solution of ballastol and water out, and one of the things that I do before I reinstall the nipples is try the best I can to clean out the threads. That's going to be another thing that's going to help keeping these from freezing and not wanting to come out the next time you clean the Revolver. And I also put a little bit of that Thompson Center bore butter on the threads before I start to reinstall them in the cylinder. Again, that's just one more thing that helps keep these things from freezing and makes it easier to get out the next time. And it's now time to reinstall these nipples back into the cylinder. By the way, a wrench like this is going to be an essential tool for this job. The type of wrenches you typically use with a muzzle loading rifle are probably not going to work in the cylinder for reinstalling the nipples. And here is the cylinder completely reassembled. By the way, when you reinstall the nipples in the cylinder, don't crank those things down in there as tight as you can absolutely get them. Get them snug, but that's good enough. Again, that's all to help keep those from freezing in the future. Also, for an added measure of protection, if you want, you can take Barricade or a similar metal protectant, put it on a cleaning patch, and put that down inside your firing chambers as well. And you can run it down through your bore if you like, just again for a little bit more protection. Now, as I start to reinstall the loading lever, I want to let you know that off camera, I went ahead and put a drop of oil at both the top and bottom of this hinge on both sides and worked it back and forth a little just to keep that moving nice and freely. That looks about right. This is another screw. Just snug it. Don't crank it down as tight as you can absolutely get it. That should be fine. Check and make sure that it's moving properly. And it's going to want to over insert when the cylinder is not there, but that is moving properly. And to reinstall the cylinder, make sure the cylinder pin is all the way forward and the loading latch, or loading lever rather, is as far up as you can get it. You're not going to be able to put it all the way up with the cylinder pin forward. Put the Revolver in the half cock notch, and the cylinder should more or less fall into place. You might have to move it around and just do, again, some wiggling and jiggling to get it in there. And once you get it into place, the cylinder pin will slide rearward all the way until it is fully engaging or fully supporting the cylinder, and the loading lever can then be latched into its place. And here is a look at my Pieta New Model Army Sheriff's Model up close. And using this cleaning process that I've just demonstrated, I have never had any problems with rust or corrosion with this Revolver. So there you go, folks. That is my cleaning process for my Pieta New Model Army black powder cap and ball Revolver. I hope you found it informative. If you have any questions or comments about this video, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you purchase anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 7% off your purchase from Optics Planet. Also remember the discount code from Hop Munitions and Hop Armament. If you go to House of Pain, you can use my discount code there, which is HRFunk10, and that'll save you 10% from your purchase from House of Pain. Last but not least is the Target sponsor for the channel. If you go to Target's online, check out their inventory and see if they have anything that's going to meet your Target needs. See you next time, folks. And until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.